Hello, and I am Paul Vixie, founder of Farsight Security. Before we kick off, I want to remind everyone this is meant to be kind of a engagement path, both for you and for us. And to that end, we need your suggestions. We need your criticisms, if any, constructive or not. So please consider dropping us a note, reflectamplify at farsightsecurity.com, which will be your way of telling us how to be more relevant, which is what we want.
Welcome, Peter.
Hi guys, thank you for having me. I'm quite honored to be your first guest and surprised to be described as a special guest, but I'll take it. So thank you. It's good to be on.
Oh, thank you for joining us. Well, you want to start giving us the 10,000-foot background?
Yeah, so I am the domain intelligence lead for DNSFilter. DNSFilter itself is, if anybody's not familiar, we're a protective DNS service, essentially. You can use our services to configure policies which block all sorts of different types of content. Primarily, it's threats online. So I called it domain intelligence just to cover the content classification side of things, but it's really mostly to do with threats. Yeah, I've been working there for a couple of years, and yeah, I'm very much enjoying it, I have to say. DNS is kind of an exciting world, which I have to admit I didn't quite realize when I joined the company. I've always been interested in DNS, but with the latest developments that have been happening in standards and encrypted DNS and all the everything, found myself embedded in a world that I didn't quite appreciate beforehand. So yeah.
I guess DNS looks pretty tame to a lot of the world. They don't know about it other than when they want to buy a domain or when somebody got DDoSed and so half the world went offline. But I will say, since you and I are lurking in some of the same forums where things like encrypted DNS are discussed and planned, you've picked it up pretty quickly.
Well, thank you. I mean, I've always found it exciting. I read DNS and Bind back in, I don't know, 1996 or something like that. And, it's one of those books that sort of changes your perspective on things. But I still didn't quite appreciate the number of things that are going on right now, especially in the last, I guess, 4 or 5 years, with standards that are coming out and the amount of work that's being done. The DNS Camel is a great example that someone pointed out to me about how many RFCs are referencing DNS. It's I knew it was a big thing, but now I'm part of the part of it. It's kind of astonishing, really, and exciting. I love it. It's yeah.
I wrote an RFC draft for April 1st some year in which I described DNS as a failure, and I listed the 50 or so RFCs which existed at that time, which is about 10 years before the DNS Camel.
50.
And I said, based on this, clearly we don't know what we're doing, so we're going to go back to the hosts.txt file, and instructions will be coming soon as to how to retrieve it. So yeah, it's a fun bunch.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's one of those things that, like you say, it kind of goes on behind the scenes. It's such a fundamental part of the internet. Everything on the internet uses DNS, and I don't know, I still, get almost shocked when I think about how well it's scaled and how it keeps working somehow. Is as a dog said. Yeah, it's a remarkable system, I have to say. So yeah.
Well, so DNSFilter is in the protective DNS segment, And at the moment, what that means is that you operate an Anycast resolver, sort of similar to 8.8 and 1.1 and 9.9 and all the others. Feel free to sing out your IP address if you want people to try you, or just point them at your website.
You're really cool. Oh, DNSFilter.com, of course. Thank you. But you have caught me out there because I don't know our resolver IPs offhand.
Now, do you have a freemium model at all, or do you have to be a customer before you can use this?
We have a free trial, I think, which is for two weeks.
Okay.
But the lowest tier is, I think, $20 a month. So it's pretty affordable, even if you do want to check it out properly.
Yeah, sweet.
And as to do the whole sales pitch, along with the excellent protective DNS services that we offer, you also get North America's fastest DNS network, according to DNSPerf.com. Don't laugh. We're very proud of this. We're beating Cloudflare and Google, so those guys have much bigger budgets than we do. You get excellent reporting. Don't. Oh, come on.
Well, the reporting is probably the only thing that is really distinctive. That's where each protective DNS operator has a chance to shine, because otherwise, you're stopping some bad things, and everybody else is stopping some bad things. There's probably some overlap as to what is stopped. But as far as being able to measure what you did, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And so it doesn't really matter how good it is if you don't know. So, I would encourage people to do a free trial just to get a report, because learning what DNS requests you have made and, what they were and how self-similar, and that's huge. That's analytics that nobody really does for themselves, but, a company like you can specialize in it. So, oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say the one of the first reactions that we get from new customers when they look at their query log and they see, all the chatty IoT devices they've got on their network is just like, oh my God, I didn't know that was going on.
Yes.
So,
and that's a big story that we have been telling about protective DNS. As you know, the inventors of the DNS response policy zone feature set, which we call a DNS firewall, both worked at Farsight and both worked at Internet Systems Consortium before that. And so we find protective DNS to be vital. And that's actually part of what informs my thoughts about DNSSEC, or thoughts about SOPA back when that was a thing. But the thing that you get is those logs. And I think we've understated that. So hopefully your company will lead with that story. In any case, we'd like to talk about passive DNS today. So I know that you and I worked together a little bit when I was still a regular employee of Farsight before the acquisition by Domain Tools, about getting DNSFilter involved. And I'm sure Ben would love it if you would say something about how that happened and how it's going.
Well, so we've been a sensor for Farsight for quite a while, so we receive a list of new domains as a feed that we integrate into our side, and we use that to help classify the new domains category, which is a kind of a tricky category for some people to understand, because most people's idea of a new domain is something that is in Whois says that it was registered recently,
right?
Which is often not the case. So, we contribute back to the Farsight passive DNS data pool, I guess, and happy to do so. And it's the thing is, we have a lot of passive DNS data ourselves. But for us, we also get access to this, to this data, and it's invaluable for things like threat research. So when we're looking into something that one of our customers reported to us, or we're evaluating a third-party feed, or we've come across something on a Twitter account or something, finding out the context and the surrounding information about a domain, when it's been active, and what are the subdomains and all that kind of information is it's core part of what we're looking into. And so for the new domain side, it's so nice to be able to go in and say, okay, so it says in GoDaddy who is that this was registered 2 days ago, but we can see that clearly that a decade ago this domain was active and doing a lot of different things and on registered to a Russian name server and that kind of thing. So yeah, we're very happy to be using these tools.
We're very happy it's useful to you, and we very much appreciate the contribution. It's very important to get, one of the things we focus on is getting the broadest coverage we can, seeing the largest, percentage of the pattern space possible. And the DNSFilter data set has been a nice boost to that. It's good to see. Any interesting research activities you guys have going on?
So recently, last year, we added a new category called trackers. So we've always had the advertising category, which is designed to block ads and ad servers, and included trackers at the time.
Yeah.
So online tracking services, mostly third-party things, which are set cookies on and track you around the web. And we split that off into advertising and trackers as well. This is a subject that is quite close to my heart, I have to say. I actually got my job. I run my own personal block list of advertising and tracking domains. I've done that since about 1997, I think, or 96. And DNSFilter uses my list. A couple of years ago, they reached out and said, hey, we just want to say thank you for your list, and it's been really helpful. We just want to make sure we're doing what we can to support you. And I said, well, you can sign up as a patron on Patreon if you like, unless you've got any remote jobs going, ho ho. But I was not being serious, but here I am 2 years later, so it worked out. So I think I was quite lucky there. But yeah, so when we launched the trackers category last year, it was something that I was really personally invested in. And it's been, I have to say, the take up from our customers is great. And one of the things that I use Farsight for is to give me context into how many related domains there are for a given. If I suspect that a domain is a tracker, I can go and look it up and see how often it's changed, and subdomains associated with it, and this kind of information as well, and also similar domains as well. One of the techniques that is used is some people call it CNAME cloaking, which is the kind of hiding behind the tracker is hidden behind a CNAME, and that's great to be able to look up and see how that's being changed in the DNS records. We have a lot of DNS data ourselves. It's just access to this massive pool from so many different contributors is what makes it really, really useful for us.
Have you played with our flexible search yet?
Yes, I have. Probably not as much as I should have. I have been using Farsight a lot more in the last, I'd say, 4 or 5 months than I have. This DNSFilter itself has had a lot of changes recently. We got some Series A funding last year, which has been fantastic. I've said it's a blessing and a curse because for a long time I was wearing quite a few hats, and I didn't have as much time as I would like to do actual proper research. So lately we've been going on a hiring spree, which has been fantastic. But all the kind of onboarding and the kind of shifts inside the company as we kind of grow, which is super exciting, has kind of taken up a lot of time. And so in the last 4 or 5 months, I've had more time to play around with the Farsight tools, I have to say.
Well, I do want to say startups are a very special thing. Small companies that whose best years are ahead of them are, wow, it's an addiction. Clearly, I'm addicted. I've started 5. I won't be started anymore, just in case anybody was wondering about that. But Ben mentioned flexible search, and I wanted to mention something that near and dear to my heart, which is regular expressions are very powerful, and it's like, powerful enough that it'll cut you if you use it wrong, but it can be daunting. And so if you're not an expert on regular expressions, and I say we because I wrote this code back when I was an employee, I've created something we call, it's my usual style. It's called what it is, the expander. And you can find that in labs.fsi.io. There's both an API that you can use. There's a GUI, graphic, web interface, but there's also a version of Scout, which I think is the graphical tool that you use, version of Scout that has Expander built into it. And to give you just the general flavor of what is supposed to make possible is, if you don't know what to do with all those brackets and up arrows and vertical bars and parentheses and so forth to make a regex, you can just type in a brand name and say, give me all the names that are the same as this, except they're different by 1 bit. So 1 0 became a 1, or a 1 became a 0. And you can find these typo squatting, these sort of near collisions that people register for the purpose of stealing traffic from other people, because bit adds and drops are not as uncommon as they should be. There are a lot of other expander commands besides that one, but it gives you the flavor of it. So if you haven't, anybody within the sound of my voice, if you haven't tinkered with the Farsight DNSDB regular expression engine because you're daunted by regex, well, go look at Labs, go look at Expander, go look at Scout plus Expander.
So a couple of things, right? First of all, I think we may have a small fight on our hands if and when we finally do meet up for a beer, Paul, because I say regex. So this, we'll see how that goes. But and the other thing was, just as an aside, the other book that changed my life when I first started getting into the internet was Mastering Regular Expressions by Jeffrey Friedel. I read that book and I was just like, oh my God, this is amazing. I need to do this. Regex is everywhere now. And it really just stuck with me. But yeah, it's incredible how bit squatting, which is the term I've heard for this thing where the cosmic rays hit a piece of silicon and it flips a bit somewhere, so that the domain changes by one byte. It sounds like one of those things which is just sort of really far-fetched and wouldn't actually have any real-world impact. Hey, cosmic rays hitting the electrical impulses. No, that's just
and the CRC still being valid.
Yeah, exactly. But in reality, because there's so much DNS traffic going on, it's actually significant enough that registering a domain which is off by 1 bit will get you legit traffic that is otherwise secure. It's remarkable. This is one of the things that I discovered being part of the DNS world, is that things like this are not just theoretical. They're real and they have real world impacts, and malware actors malware gangs are taking advantage of these techniques. So it's important to actually dig into that kind of thing.
Well, there's a truism which seems obvious in retrospect, but which was not in anybody's heart back in the 80s when this was all being thought of. And I'll take my hat off to Paul Makapetros, the inventor of all of this, who has become a personal friend and was a investor and board member for Farsight as well. He designed something that has scaled 9 orders of magnitude. And if you look at the history of humanity, that's been done exactly once by him, and it was this. And that's huge. Wow. On the other hand, things like bit squatting fall under the heading of something which is obvious now, wasn't obvious then, which is nothing which can be abused won't be.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. One of the things about the malware research that I've done is how similar they are really just to software houses. They're just standard software development companies, essentially. They get
support lines.
They have better support than most startups these days.
They have benefits.
Yeah, right. And they get into work and they drink their coffee in the morning and they get away. They start hacking away. Literally, well, it depends on your point of view of hacking. But anyway, they're hacking away, and then they finish at 6, and they get bonuses and they get incentives for coming up with new novel ideas and new design patterns and how to take advantage of people. But their ultimate aim is it's the same as software development with just a slightly different intention. Well, depending on the company, I suppose. But yeah.
Yeah, you can look at some surveillance capitalists out there and wonder whether you'd just prefer to deal with the malware.
Yeah, really.
Speaking of surveillance capitalism, given that you are a sensor operator and that you have a broad set of customers around the world, did you have any concerns about the privacy of sharing your sort of DNS metadata with us, given that surveillance capitalism and Edward Snowden is on everybody's mind? I know that Farsight gets criticism for, gee, you're vacuuming up all the data and selling it to people. Okay. Probably not, but just wondering, what was your evaluation process there?
It's a fair question. And as I mentioned, privacy is something that's particularly interesting to me. So when I started looking into it, I did look at how the data is collected and what you're doing with it and what's sent over the wire. And yeah, I have to say that I didn't really have any qualms about our partnership. It was I'm from Europe, where GDPR comes from, and I've been looking into privacy stuff since I ran 20 odd years for my tracker list. So I care about this a lot, and I'm more than happy to be working with Farsight with that.
Very cool.
Yeah. It's a win-win situation, really. I mean, you can get all the benefits of the passive DNS data collection without having all that extra information. And that's kind of one of the things, without wanting to get too ranty, that's one of the things that really upsets me about this massive data collection that is happening all the time by everybody. It just defaults to collect as much data as you can, and there's no need for it. You don't need all this stuff. You can get the benefits, what you need out of it, without collecting individual IP addresses and all the kind of micro-targeting data that people seem to want for some reason. I have regular arguments with my marketing friends about this, but that's another matter. But yeah,
sometimes this is going to seem like an existential threat. Like, if our competitors do this and we don't, then all this is a path to bankruptcy. If that's our path, let's pick a different thing, different business to be in. And I don't see it that way. I think that saying that because everybody else is doing it, it's okay. That was not what was in my heart, certainly, when I was working on my PhD in 2008 and came up with kind of the original version of the sensor and the first version of the SIE software. I thought, if we can do this in a way that is not privacy alienating, it's going to have the most coverage of any similar system, because all those universities and ISPs and so forth won't run away. And that turned out to be true. So doing the right thing in this case, given that we had to stick to it for a lot of years before we had really the big breakthroughs, but doing the right thing is not a path to automatic bankruptcy. It just isn't it's also not a path to a quick flip, which is not what I wanted to do anyway. And I want to mention, you mentioned GDPR. So I'm not really with Farsight anymore. But I did continue with the SIE Europe project, which is something that Farsight and BFK in Germany and CSIS in Denmark put together. It's a nonprofit data sharing framework for the GDPR region. And, there's a lot of resonance there. There are a lot of people who are privacy aware. They know about surveillance capitalism. They don't like it. They don't want to be part of it, but they are sharing their data with SIE Europe. And in exchange for that, they get access to the European-only database that is created there. Boy, it's working. People are getting it. They understand that. I'd like the rest of the world to become as privacy aware as Europe currently is.
Yeah, I have to say, it is. I quite. There's a lot of criticism to be had for the EU and for Europe, and I'm English, so I'm not even technically European anymore. But I do live in Malta, so that's kind of my saving grace. But yeah, the privacy laws, and there's actually even more coming up in Europe as well with the DSA and these digital marketing regulations that are coming into place. I think it's one aspect I'm really proud of from this side of the world, that it's genuinely looking towards benefiting the end user, the people who are using the internet, not the people who are profiting from it. With the SI Europe, it's a brilliant organization, and it's a win-win situation. People are just, there's no downside to it. There's no reason not to do it.
I do want to point out it's totally nonprofit. There's no fee. No one can buy the data. They either participate as a sensor and see the data, or they don't. And that also is huge. If it had data for sale, it would not seem safe. Now, since you mentioned living in Britain, I want to say Britain takes some, I think, unearned criticism from privacy zealots around the world. As an example, there are more license plate cameras and facial recognition cameras operated by the British government than any other country on a per capita basis, period. So it's worse than China in that regard. However, the people who live there know about this, and it doesn't get abused. The government uses it when they should for the reasons they said they would, and not otherwise. And I think it's working. And I think it should be a model to be studied instead of disparaged on a reactionary basis. But with regard to DNSFilter, there is something else that gets Britain in some hot water, and I think undeservedly so, which is the idea that you have to filter known online child abuse materials. It's just something ISPs have to do there. It's the law, more or less. And, the government knows where those things are and doesn't really want to publish the catalog. So there's a private relationship between some elements of the British government and the various ISPs who have to block things that the public in general can't get the list of. I think that is working. We're not seeing online child abuse materials going away, but we're seeing the growth slower in some regions than in others, and Britain is one of those regions.
Yeah, this is the Internet Watch Foundation, who is an independent organization in the UK. They're closely, tied to the government, but they do their job on their own. And I think they kind of have to be to have no influence from the government. And they're doing an amazing job. And I actually agree. I have to say, when I first heard about the IWF watch list was going to be mandatory for ISPs, I had some of those concerns that, it could be misused, that there's a potential for the government to exert their influence and censor things. And, but it has, you're right, it has worked out, and it is genuinely making a difference. They do amazing work, and it's part of my job, which I have to deal with, and I kind of wish I didn't, but I'm glad that I'm able to help the internet in that way somehow, because it really is important.
Absolutely. So we've got a question from YouTube. Given all the discussions of privacy, do you think DOH takes advantage of the momentum of that discussion to push other agendas, or should it be taken seriously as a privacy tool?
Oh, DOH.
Pull out the pen. I believe this is yours.
Yeah. Sorry, for me? Oh, right. Sure. I see. Sorry. Well, that's quite an open-ended question, I think.
Yeah.
So I think that DOH is definitely taking advantage of momentum. It's taking advantage of a lot of different things, and there are definitely agendas being pushed. It's tricky. So I guess the purported reason for DOH being a thing is that it enhances privacy. But I think the ultimate result is that it is perhaps not as effective as it makes itself out to be. I believe we're nearly at time, so perhaps I'm going to avoid putting my foot in anything right now.
Well, I think we could have a whole episode on DOH, and maybe
We
we
really
will.
did.
It's probably a
But
series of that, but yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's a very controversial subject, and I want to mention, if anybody's interested in that subject, there are a couple of different forums. EncryptedDNS.org runs weekly meetings talking about it. The IETF ADD, which is all about client systems, endpoint systems, using a DNS server other than the one that is operated by their ISP or whatever, and how they negotiate around that and what are the implications. There are forums where this is being discussed, and Peter and I are certainly part of those, as are other people who are at Farsight, and we hope to see you there.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. I think it's time to get back to work. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah.
But
I really, really envy you guys who have work to get back to.
for real, we can
And-
swap positions any day, Paul.
I want to say, for the record, I'm not retired. I'm just unemployed.
2 plugs in one day. Cool. So yeah, join us next time. I think we'll probably talk about the true cost of storage. It's easy for us to say storage is cheap. It's a little harder to explain your S3 bill.
Oh my. Like a moth to a flame you are, my friend.
Jumping right in. What can I say? So yeah, we very much appreciate the comments and questions that came along, and feel free to comment in the YouTube when it's up. We'll see if we can respond to those.
I've been reading, and I found out there's something we're supposed to say, Ben.
Yep.
Please like and subscribe if you feel we've earned it.
Yes. Convince the YouTube algorithm that this is worthy of further eyeballs. Please.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
May
Thanks,
our
Peter.
expectations be reasonable. Thank you, Peter.